embarks on online dating knows it's something you have to treat with a bit of caution. But if you're black, it can be particularly difficult. Bim Adewumne found herself described on the one hand as an ugly black girl and on the other as a Nubian queen. And despite being as British-born and bred as the next woman, she was asked several times where she really came from. So how do you prevent racism in online dating? What would you make of someone who said they only wanted to date someone from a particular race? Where is the line between personal preference and prejudice either for or against what's perceived as exotic? Well, Precious Williams is a writer and Bim is a freelance journalist and blogger. So, Bim, how did you describe yourself online?
I described myself as at the time, I was 27 years old. And I mentioned that I was a journalist and that I lived in London. It was just basic signifiers of who I am. I also put up a profile photo, and when it came to selecting the race and the ethnicity I most identified with, I went with black African.
And what did you say you were looking for?
I said I was looking for somebody, I think the age range I put down was 27 to 32. And I think that's pretty much it. I think I also specified non-smoker, but I think that's about it.
What responses shocked you?
Well, first of all, I must say that not all of the responses were horrible. Not all of them were racist. Not all of them were offensive. There were a number of really nice people. The first night that I joined the dating site, I had an instant message conversation with a nice guy who was about my age. He was a graphic designer. It was a normal 20-minute chat, and that was fine. But then I got a few. There was one that asked me, in my profile photo, part of my face is obscured, and he emailed me specifically to ask why I was hiding half my face before helpfully suggesting that perhaps it was because I was an ugly black girl. And then I got another person who emailed to kind of basically he threw a number of compliments at me, ending with a magnificent, I was like a Nubian queen. I think he said I had a Nubian queenly countenance, which is completely rubbish because I'm eating a crisp in the photo. It's nothing queenly about that.
What sort of experiences, Precious, did you have?
I had really positive experiences with online dating. I ended up going out on dates with 4 people I met online, 2 of them black, 2 of them white actually, and they're all sane, which surprised me because I thought online dating would attract weirdos. Some of the people who responded to my ad, who I didn't end up meeting in person, were a little weird, but it didn't tend to be about race. They just came across as being a little strange.
Did you specify what you were looking for?
I did. One thing that I specified was that I quite boldly said I didn't want any men who are less than 5'11" tall.
Now, where is the difference between Bim specifying I would like someone who's blonde, no less than 5'11" tall, blue-eyed, highly educated? Why is that different from saying I would like a black man with all those things?
It isn't necessarily. It's not that different. But I do think that it's interesting from an anthropological point of view that some people get more responses, some people get less responses. I think it's an interesting thing that there is the people who select for people. It's the results aren't uniform across the race groups. So I suppose it's not that different from saying, well, I don't want a blonde person. I mean, I think I specified I don't want a smoker. It's fine. They're all choices. However, I think a lot of the time the thing that informs and influences the decisions when we select or deselect a particular racial group, it's not as simple and as straightforward as saying, well, they're just not my type or I just don't like them. I think it's quite a deliberate thing when you're online. I mean, it's something you can kind of excuse or perhaps not really think about when you're outside in the real world. You know, you see someone, you either find them attractive or you don't. And it seems more knee-jerk. However, when you're online and you were given pretty much a shopping list of what you want and what you don't want, you tick specifically and you don't tick specifically. And I think that's interesting. But, you know, rightly, it's not something that is that different. I suppose it's just Yeah, it's that option.
How much difficulty do you have with that idea of a shopping list that may include race?
I mean, I think on the surface it sounds really controversial, but I think it's something that most of us do offline in the real world anyway. I mean, I think most people, especially in London, wouldn't sort of go out thinking, I'm not going to date a black man or an Asian woman, but some do. But they just wouldn't voice it. They wouldn't go up to a woman at a bar and say, I'm not going to date you because you're black. But they're thinking it, and they're not even going to approach the black woman. So I think online everything becomes more sort of upfront. And one of the things that attracted me to trying online dating was that you can specify. You know, I didn't want to date a man who's really young. For some reason I kept attracting young men. You know, as I said, I didn't want a short man. And I actually toyed with the idea of specifying that I would like to date a black man, because I would. But I'm not, but I'm also open to dating other races. So in the end, I didn't specify any particular race.
How concerned would you be to be described, as Bim was, as a Nubian queen? That sort of sense of somehow the sexy exotic, isn't it?
Yeah, I did get approached by some white men who said things like, I love black women, or, you know, my ex-wife was black. Or you get those men who, I think any man who, you know, I think any man who doesn't really like women of his own race and has almost like a fetish for women of another race, be it white men who only want to date ethnic women, or there are plenty of black men who only want to date white women, I do sort of worry a little bit about where they're coming from. But I don't have a problem with black men who only want to date within their own race. So how dare I have I don't see anything wrong with that. So how dare I have a problem with a white man who only wants to date a white woman?
How could these sites, Bim, prevent open racism? You know, that somebody being called an ugly black girl is awful.
Well, it's a difficult one, because the whole point of online dating is that you're actively searching for someone. You want to meet somebody, and so you've gone online and you have put in the criteria that you're after. I think it's difficult I spoke to a number of dating sites when I was writing the article, and I think there was only one I spoke to who said, actually, we don't put any kind of, we don't give the option for you to select by race. We don't think that's something that we want to get into. But then they also said, but we allow for religion, which is, I suppose, it's important, and I suppose I would argue just as important as race. However, there is a line between race and religion. But I think it's a difficult one to govern, because you can go about completely, happily all day with all manner of racist thoughts in your head, and you don't ever have to express them. Like Precious said, you wouldn't go up to a woman in a bar and kind of go, well, you know what, I'm going to speak to every woman in this bar except you because you're black. That would be absurd. So it's a difficult one to police. And I must stress, it's not, the people who kind of emailed me or messaged me to say that I was an ugly black girl or whatever. I don't think that they're not the majority of people out there, but that was my experience.
How much, now Precious has confessed it, how much would you really like to meet someone of a shared background, cultural, racial, education?
I think I would like that, but I don't think it's that important. I mean, for example, when I went online dating, I didn't select any group or deselect any group simply because I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to be open. I'm not going to put any kind of strictures on what I'm looking for. But I suppose, in a way, I would like somebody, if I'm completely brutally honest, I would probably like somebody who at least had been to college, post-GCSE.
Non-smoking, well-educated.
Yes.
And yours has to be more than 5'11". Bim Adewunmi, Precious Williams.